All right, in this video, I want to do something on the server similar to what we did on the client, but I promise it won't be as long. Basically, I want to organize our server into a collection of 3 modules: chat, playlist, and users. And those modules, I want to have a consistent UI in how they are integrated into the server, and I want to do that in a sort of decoupled manner so that adding or removing modules isn't that big of a deal. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's open up source and server, and then in server, I'm going to create a new folder called lib. And inside of lib, I'm going to create a new file instead of that called module.js. Now, module is going to import observable from RxJS. Now, these module classes, this is going to be really small. I'm just going to go ahead and write it. Module base. It's very simple. I'll explain it all in a second. We'll have init money equals observable.empty. We'll have register client, and we'll have client registered. Really, all we're doing is defining 3 callback methods. So every single module will be able to initialize, but it'll be able to initialize asynchronously. And that's an important thing. That's why my init method will return a observable. And in this case, we're defaulting to returning an empty observable, which will complete and not produce any items, and that's fine. Then we have register client. Register client is going to get a client instance. But I can't put that there because ESLint will yell at me. I guess I could actually disable that rule for just this file. I'll show you guys how to do that. I could actually go up to the top. So the rule that we're violating is no unused vars. I can come up here and add a comment. So open up a multi-line comment, type in ESLint, and then type in the rule you want. And in this case, it's no unused vars, followed by a colon, and then followed by off, and then end that comment. And by putting that comment up there, we're not going to get yelled at for not using this variable. And we'll do the same thing for client registered. So register client is what's going to add in all of our event handlers. So imagine, don't type this in, but pretend that we're writing the module for the playlist. We'll do something like client.onAction playlist add, and then data. And then we'll put our handler in here. So register client is all about registering the client API. And then client registered is a callback that'll be invoked when all of the modules have had an opportunity to register the client. That's important because some modules might depend on other modules, and those other modules might have initialization code inside the register client. So we want to also have a chance to be notified when all the clients are registered. But that's it. That's our module base. And we only have 3 modules to write. So let's stub out our 3 modules. Again, I promise it won't be that scary. I'm going to add a new folder under server called modules. And I'm going to create my chat module. My chat module, I'm going to say import module base from lib modules. Or modules, sorry. And I'm going to export class chat module extends module base. I am, however, going to, since these are so simple, I'm going to include dependencies here. The chat module is going to take in an IO and a users module. And we'll say this IO equals IO, and this users equals users. Also, be sure to call super. Otherwise, it'll yell at you. So this users module will be assigned to our _users field. And we'll do a bunch of other crazy stuff in this module later, obviously, but for now, that's what we're leaving it as. Let's go ahead and create another stub here for playlist. Now, playlist is going to be the same thing. So I'll copy this bit, and I'll say export class playlist module extends module base, and he'll have a constructor that takes in IO users playlist repository and services. Or how about video services? And he'll do super, then he'll do this IO equals IO, this users equals, I want this to actually say users module in the constructor to be clear, but for shorthand, the field that I'm going to assign it to is going to be just simply _users. And then we'll do underscore repository equals playlist repository, and this underscore services equals video services. Let's talk about these. Since we have time, let's talk about these dependencies. Users module is used for authentication and all that fun stuff. Playlist repository is used to load and save the playlist data to the disk or to a database. It can be anything. That's why we're taking it in as a dependency. And then video services are used to locate videos. So for example, if you were to try to add a YouTube video or a Vimeo video, the video services are what's going to pick up on the fact that you're trying to add a YouTube or Vimeo video and then go out and actually hit the respective APIs and return the proper data. So obviously the playlist module is the most complicated of all the modules, as is the playlist component. So let's go ahead and add another module called users. And we'll do the same thing here. We're just going to grab this and we'll say export class users module extends module base constructor IO. This IO equals IO, and of course remember to call super. So the users module is actually really straightforward. All right, now that we have our three modules stubbed out, we can instantiate them and see how they relate to each other. So in server.js, scroll all the way to the top, and we're going to start importing things. We can take off this import for observable, since we won't need that. After observable socket, I'll import users module from modules users. I'll import playlist module from modules playlist, and I'll import chat module from modules chat. So now we have those three modules defined. Let's go ahead and scroll down here. So after configuring Express, we have our modules. And actually, before our modules, we're going to have some services, some video services. For now, it's just going to be an empty array, as well as our playlist repository. So I'm going to copy and paste this delineation and create a services. And we're going to say const video services equals empty array. And I'm going to say const playlist repository equals empty objects. Now we are going to actually be making a playlist repository later when we actually implement our playlist, but I wanted to satisfy the dependencies so I don't have to worry about that. Then I'm going to say const users. Now the order matters here because some of these modules depend on each other. Const users equals new users module, which expects an IO in its constructor, so pass an IO. Const chat equals new chat module. Chat module wants an IO and users. We want a const playlist equals new playlist module, which playlist wants an IO, a users, a playlist repository, and video services. And then we want our, actually, that's it. Those are our three modules. Then next up, I'm going to create an array of them. I'm going to say var modules equals an array of users, chat, and playlist. All right, so now we can do our socket. So we can remove this onAction login because that was just for testing. Let's go ahead and when a socket connection comes in and we instantiate the client, let's go ahead and register this client with all of our modules. That's really easy to do. For let mod of modules mod.register client. I could use a for each with a lambda here, but I'll just use a for of loop instead. It's a little cleaner. So for let mod of modules and then mod client registered client. So now you see how we first tell all the modules to register the client so that the client gets his API from each respective module, and then we tell all the modules that the client is now registered. All right, time for startup. Actually, why did I remove a reference to observable? Because we need an observable. So let's go ahead and bring back the import of observable. And on the way up, I'll show you guys what we added. Pay attention to the left-hand side. You'll see what was added in this code. We added this code right here. We added our modules instantiations, if you want to take a look at that. And then all the way at the top, we added these imports. But let's go ahead and import observable from RxJS. All right, so make sure you add that back in. That was my mistake. With that, let's scroll all the way to the bottom and do our initialization, our startup. Now it'll be clear why start server is a function. So what I'm going to do is say observable.merge ... modules map, m goes into m init money, .subscribe, and I'm going to pass in an object here, complete is going to say start server. Error is going to have an error and simply going to say console error could not init module error stack or error. And be sure to remove the start server from the bottom. So what are we doing here? We're simply saying, observable, go ahead and merge in all the initialization functions from all of the modules, right? So go ahead and perform your initialization, which can be asynchronous, which is why we're using observables here. They're great for representing asynchronous operations. And then subscribe to that. When you're done with everything, start the server. So complete will be invoked when the server has started. And if there was an error, go ahead and print out the error. And that's our server stub. If I come over here, we see that the server is indeed running. So again, all we did was we stubbed out our 3 main modules and the relationships between them. So now we shouldn't have to touch our server.js anymore, except when we go in to add the video service in the playlist repository, which we'll be doing once we start working on the playlist. And that's our application stub. We now have a very, very, very handy roadmap of what to do. We got we finished up with all of the super repetitive code for the structure of the application, so hopefully we'll run into fewer typos going forward, since it's very easy to have issues with repetitive code. But that's what the application looks like so far, and now it's time to start implementing it component by component. And we're going to have a big discussion about how the data exactly is going to get from the server to the client, and we're going to talk about the architecture of how that data works. But with that, we're going to see you guys in the next section, I guess. We'll see you there.